Hey guys, my name is RGB and welcome back to another Yandere Simulator redesign video. The last one was so well received that I had to come back with a second part featuring more of the characters for us to further develop our story. We also reached 2.5k subs because of it. Thank you so much! So this video will be extra long as a special for reaching that milestone. In the last video, we did a redesign and a rewrite of Ayano and Teru, which changed the story's overall development quite a bit. If you haven't watched it yet, I suggest you do before following up with this one. Okay, we'll be working on Raibaru, Osana, Asu and Osoro today. The last two can be a bit surprising to y'all because in the community pool that I posted for us to see which characters you wanted to see, they're ranked as the ones you want to see the least. But I decided to intertwine the lore of these four characters, and the trio of Raibaru, Asu and Osoro have an especially interesting case of miscommunication that makes things turn pretty somber. I thought of this because the idea of the rivals having relationships amongst themselves will show the audience that the school is a community where people interact daily and will eventually form connections. In the main Yandere Sim game, it feels like people are just there. I don't really feel like they have strong relationships or care about each other. Maybe I haven't played enough, but even Raibaru's and Osana's relationship really seems shallow, which I tried my best to fix in this rewrite. It felt like an interesting thing to add to help the players be more attached to the characters' lives and relationships so that the genocide road can be even more heart-wrenching in comparison to the pacifist road. Anyways, let's get right into the redesign. So for the rivals, and Raibaru, I don't think she's actually a rival. We'll be going over the redesign, personality, and background. The background, we have a little bit of relationship highlights, and maybe some sprinkles of family information. So the first character we will be working on is Raibaru Fumetsu. I don't know. Raibaru is probably the one who will be making the most drastic change today. Or maybe not, when you see Asu, you may think differently. I overall see her as an useless character because she is only Osana's bodyguard. Raibaru only exists so eliminating Osana can be harder. They are friends and are always together, but I'm not sure what happened between them to form such a close relationship. I decided to work on that. Design-wise, the fact that Raibaru used to be an Osana placeholder and looks like a low-budget carbon copy of her really prevents me from seeing her as her own person, aside from a meme character. That's why I completely redesigned her. You can even say I made an entirely new character with the same name, and that would be fair. I gave her a wild wolf cut paired with an uneven fringe. She has a small crocheted headband that matches Osana's big hair accessory as well as a friendship bracelet. Raibaru has a small lip scar which she got when she was defeated for the first time. I was going to change her colors to something more muted, but I didn't because it felt like I was already changing her way too much, so if I just gave her black hair, it would be like, this is an OC at this point. She wears her uniform very messily, after tying her blazer around her waist and pulling up her sleeves. Too many layers make her uncomfortable, she says. Raibaru is also unable to keep her thigh-highs in place as they're always falling and bunching up on top of her sneakers. Faculty members usually turn a blind eye towards her clothes because of her family status. They're pretty loaded, so Raibaru almost always gets away with her actions. She used to be the first leader of the martial arts club. Her confident and eloquent nature often drew people in under her wing, creating a legion of devoted apprentices who looked up to her. Everyone at the school knew they could count on Raibaru to help with stopping troublemakers and bullies, as she was also the most feared student because of her sheer strength. Her savior complex built her a reputation of being the indestructible rival, with a 100% winning streak. She felt the need to be a safe harbor to the weak and helpless, because she wished no one would have to go through needless pain. Raibaru's need to help everyone comes from being out of touch with the average person's reality. She was raised to be better than everyone else, and although she isn't spoiled rotten or has a bad personality, in her mentality she is factually better than everyone, and because of that, she needs to help every helpless soul, which turns her line of thinking into something very insensitive if spoken out loud. Back to present day, you might wonder why she left the martial arts club and how she and Osana met. Long history short, Raibaru was involved with a student called Osoro Shidesu. At the time they were friends, Osoro was a promising star with simple roots. She was poor amongst the wealthy peers and yet exceeded at sports and academically. Her fall from grace was very sudden, and to this day, Raibaru still can't understand what happened in her friend's head, but she just knew she was fighting her mental turmoil. Osoro was part of the sports club but often would visit the martial arts one in order to spar with Raibaru. Both of them were specializing in taekwondo, which turned them into friendly rivals. Yet, Osoro obviously never managed to defeat Raibaru, which sparked something negative inside of her. As time went by, Raibaru saw her friends start to struggle with something at school. She often would complain about having her books stolen, as well as her desk drawn on. A few times, she would come back with bruises on her legs or arms, but she never spoke about it. After putting enough pressure on Osoro, Raibaru finally managed to get her to speak up about what was happening, since it was affecting her performance on absolutely everything. Osoro confessed that she was being bullied by a group of really important girls, so she didn't want to do anything about it. Because of that, she made Raibaru promise not to do anything about it too. Yet, Raibaru's savior complex blinded her, and she didn't take any more mature measures. She ended up deciding to confront the bullies on her own. Her reckless attitude seemed to work for a while, until Osoro came back the next day with a deep, ugly scar on her cheek. At the end of the day, Osoro challenged Raibaru to a fight outside of school. That fight left Raibaru severely injured, with her fractured knee leading her to quit martial arts for a long time. On that same day, Osana was the one who found Raibaru defeated and hurt outside of school, and took her to the hospital to tend to her wounds. She gushed about how Raibaru looked like her favorite game character, and proceeded to talk non-stop about said game as she recovered. Osana visited Raibaru every day, each week bringing her new things to talk about. She ended up taking a new hobby of knitting because Osana's favorite character also did so. They eventually developed a really close bond, and Raibaru is somehow grateful for how things unfolded. Mechanic-wise, I feel like he would be able to matchmake Osana with Raibaru because they would be really cute together. And Raibaru would be an obstacle, but in a different way. You don't get automatically gamed over if she sees you killing because she's not super fast and is going to take you down immediately. But after she sees you committing a crime, she will instantly walk in your direction, but she can't run, so it will be kind of slow. But every time she sees you, you will end up having to run away from her and from the game over, because if she catches you, it's game over. So it's like a walking thread around school if you don't get rid of her quickly. Now that we have Raibaru out of the way, let's go into Osana. She's the most iconic rival since day one, and very likely the first character that pops up in your mind when you think of Yandere Simulator rival. When I was planning her redesign, I looked up a few hairstyles I could try to use instead of her pigtails, but when I picked into the cast of main/important characters from Yandere Sim, I noticed she was very unique by being the only one with such long pigtails for hairstyle. Needless to say that it felt unnecessary to change her looks too much. I believe there are criticisms to her pigtails being excessively long and unrealistic, but when it's anime and people have natural pink hair, that just sounds like nitpicking. I made her hair more flowy to spice up her silhouette and make it something more unique. There's nothing wrong with her scrunchies or bowl in my point of view, but they didn't really feel necessary, so instead I gave Osana a crocheted hair accessory thing. I don't really know how to describe it or if there is an equivalent of that in real life, but it seemed cool to me and has the small detail of it being handmade by Raibaru, with the goal of attracting more eyes to Osana to help her woo senpai. Her uniform is the standard uniform we redesigned in our last video, with the change of her socks being pink. I know that some Japanese schools are very strict about uniform modifications, but for Yandere Sim school I decided they would be very open with those. Lastly, she has a crocheted friendship bracelet she matches with Raibaru. Now onto her personality changes. Osana is made with the intention of filling the tsundere character role. She's mean and is always angry when she's around senpai, but that's just because she's in love with him. With everyone else, she's a normal girl. I personally really dislike the tsundere archetype. I don't find endearing bullying or being physically aggressive towards someone you like, regardless of your gender, so you bet I did some changes on her overall personality. On daytime hours, Osana Najimi is a normal student. At night, she makes gaming live streams that have been growing in popularity as of recent. She plays all kinds of games, and the public loves her witty and sassy personality, paired with her strong and bold opinions. Outside of her live streams, she's a reserved person with a few friends who has the tendency to keep her thoughts to herself, making her seem like a closed-off person with an angry resting face. Up until she met Raibaru and Senpai came to study at Academy High, it wasn't uncommon to see Osana having lunch alone by herself and her gaming Switch. Taro and Osana are childhood friends. Their families are long-term friends and always maintain contact, even after Taro's parents moved to Latin America. Since Osana's family is stable financially, they managed to travel, visit them at least 4 times a year, and stayed for long periods of time. When they were away, both kids nurtured their relationships online by texting, playing multiplayer games, or just talking for hours through voice chat. They could bond through their shared love of games and books, which eventually turned into a friendship where they would just talk about anything and all kinds of topics. Because of her nature, Osana has never been one to have too many crushes. She has always felt strongly about Taro, but the realization of being in love with him only hit recently when he moved to Japan, to the same school as her. Being near him daily and managing to walk together to school only made her affection grow and turned her into a confusing mess. She acts strangely and is often too blunt, but she tries to keep her snarky and sassy comments under control. After she met Raibaru, she feels like she's in the highest point of her life. Raibaru supports her streaming hobbies and hears about her interests for hours, even if she doesn't understand anything. She has 2 precious friends who only make everything so much more fun, so she really hopes this lasts forever. I believe my changes to Osana are pretty minimal, with only a few tweakings to make it more interesting and for her to fit better into the story we've crafted so far. Osana is a highly relatable character for most viewers, and to me personally, as she has a love for games, is kind of socially awkward and lives on the internet. Personally, it makes it a lot harder to eliminate her because the girl is just at the highest point in her life, and she doesn't really have high standards. Now, onto a few points that are kind of interesting to develop further into. Osana's stalker is a creep who has developed a parasocial relationship because of her live streams. Ayano has the option of using this in the pacifist or genocide route. Most of the elimination methods are the same, but developing a relationship with the duo of Osana and Raibaru is a lot more rewarding than eliminating her. I'm not mentioning too much about their relationship because I already explained in the Raibaru section, which was the first, but they are a really interesting duo together. And you definitely get more benefits by being Raibaru's and Osana's friend than just eliminating her. That's why the genocide route is kinda harder than the pacifist one. Senpai, Osana, and Raibaru have lunch together and they're all from the same class. Osana is the hardest rival because she's around Senpai a lot more often and has Raibaru by her side. She's also the one you should carefully think about the elimination method if you're taking the genocide route, because whatever happens to her will affect Taro deeply, and it might trigger an instant game over. Osana is one of the biggest reasons why Taro is enrolled in Academy High after all. And that's Osana. I believe I didn't change too much about her. I also forgot to mention that I made her eyes blue because it will contrast better with her hair color, and I turned the redder parts of her design into pink because, again, it would match better with her overall colors. Do tell me what you think about her in the comments. Now we're going to talk about Asu's redesign. Asu Rito? I don't know how to say her last name. As a character and a rival, Asu is a very forgettable one. She's not very interesting in any aspect, which is a shame since there's a lot you can do with a sporty girl character. About her redesign, the first thing you probably notice is that she's the only one who doesn't wear skirts. She's also not wearing the school's blazer, and doesn't even carry it with her, unlike Raibaru. She's a tomboy rival and presents herself in a more masculine way, except for the bow tie, which is still from the female version of the uniforms. She will also never wear too many layers, even when it's winter, because she naturally feels less cold than everyone else. She got tougher from swimming under crazy temperatures. As she is the first club leader I'm working on, I decided to draw her close up doing club activities, and her full body would be the way she normally walks around school. I visually darkened her skin so her tan can be more noticeable. Differently from Senpai, whose skin is naturally darker, Asu's skin is from a natural long-term tanning. I changed her hairstyle to something a bit more mysterious and charming, and picked a dark blue color for it. I personally don't like that Asu is blonde, because I view it as the delinquent hair color or the bully's hair color. It doesn't mean no one can be naturally blonde, but I wanted the bleached blonde hair color to be specific for certain groups, so it will help with recognizing and setting them apart. Blue was chosen for Asu because of her connection to water and to transmit calm vibes from her. Her yellow eye color was changed to complement her hair color. There's also a beauty mark on her cheek that hypes up her charm. Now onto her personality. As expected, she is still cheerful and energetic, but in a more mature way. She's not cheerful like, let's say, Senpai's little sister, who is like, "Oh my god, I like my brother, ooh!" She's more mature. She always speaks thoughtfully and is admired by others because of that. Her confidence turns into something naturally charming to girls when she's talking and being kind to them. Asu is known as the school's prince. Her tomboy style and natural charm always managing to accidentally sweep girls off their feet. No girl can resist her charms, as at least once they've got themselves thinking about how cool and mysterious Asu seems to be. She's always surrounded by girls, which led to many boys developing a grudge against her for stealing the attention of their crushes. Senpai approaches Asu because he wants to join the sports club. He gets interested after learning about the football team, since it's a big sport in his native country and also his favorite sport. Upon meeting Asu, he's immediately puzzled and enticed by her reputation. Both of them accidentally form a rivalry. Their charming personalities clash in a dispute to decide who's more popular with the girls. They thrive on showing off how many love letters or gifts they got in a week, or how many confessions they received in a month. Aside from the dating perspective, they form a rivalry on football grounds. Their relationship is always refreshing for both, because they respect and see each other as a valuable opponent. Needless to say, their friendship forms easily and becomes stronger as they learn more about each other and continue with their playful bickering and contest. Senpai will eventually find out that the best way to defeat Asu, once and for all, is to make her fall for him. He will start to direct his charms towards her in order to disarm her defenses, since she has never been approached by a boy in that way. This will show to be super effective, as Asu will start to fall for him in no time, but she wouldn't fall alone. Her attacks would also be directed to him, and if no one interferes, they might become the most charming couple in school in no time. But of course, everyone has secrets and weaknesses, and Asu is no exception. Yan-chan will soon find out about her past with Osoro Shidesu, and how she cowardly let her old friend be victim to bullying to save her own skin. At the time, Osoro was a member of the sports club, the second best after Asu herself. She would practice non-stop, would always be available and ready to help when needed, but some people didn't like Osoro's roots. She was the odd one out after everyone found out about her family status. The bullies started to target her, and as time went by, things got worse. They started to spread rumors about her being a thief and a delinquent, since she obviously could only have got into such an expensive school by stealing and scamming others. Asu knew that wasn't true, and would often have angry outbursts when people spoke too badly of her friend around her. But the bullies didn't care. They were set on turning Osoro's life into hell. They knew about Asu's Olympic dreams and how she was training non-stop to achieve her dream of becoming an Olympic athlete. As she was one of the biggest reasons Osoro's reputation remained strong even after so many rumors trying to attain it, they gave her an ultimatum. She would have to break off her relationship with Osoro or her well-being would be at risk. They indirectly threatened her, and Asu was in shock. She really couldn't risk getting severely injured to the point she would be unable to swim, and she didn't trust the school authorities to protect her or do something about the bullying, since it had been a big problem for the longest time. And so, Asu abruptly ended her relationship with Osoro, leaving her to fend off for herself and deal with the bullies alone. Asu had many strengths, but at the end of the day, her fatal flaw was being a coward. Now lastly, but definitely not least, we're tackling Osoro Shidesu's redesign. Osoro is an interesting rival, but in the main game, her design is a bit lacking. I personally really like her hairstyle, and I'm okay with her hair color, so I ended up not changing these two aspects of her. I tweaked her scar so it was less perfectly symmetrical. My biggest issue with her is the way she's dressed. As I've stated before, I really dislike the main uniform the characters wear, so I felt like just switching that already was a huge improvement on her design. I inspired her heavily on the Sukeban delinquent style, giving her a really long skirt with chains attached to it. Similarly to other characters shown so far, she also wears her uniform differently, not using her bow tie and leaving her blazer draped over her shoulder. Her shirt is unbuttoned, which shows her chest, which is binded with bandages just like her hand. I reduced the amount of random bandages around her body because in the original design, most of them didn't really serve any purpose. You could say that for my Osoro, she's just more buff and dresses differently. What I mostly changed about her was her personality and backstory. We don't know much about Canon Osoro, since she's a late game rival and there's not much inside the game about her. Osoro used to be a girl like any other. Her hair was dark and she was slim, similarly to Horuda. She has always been very hardworking, taking many part-time jobs to manage to get into Academy High. Her dream was to become a doctor, so she could eventually make enough money to escape from poverty. She hoped that achieving that dream would fix her parents' relationship, but that was not something she really wanted deep down. She didn't have any big ambitions besides making money. She was kind and eager to help, and her story is a typical innocent girl gets crushed by bullies and things don't end well. Underneath her kindness and honesty, there was a determined persona who was eager and strong. When her bullying started, she didn't bat an eye. Osoro was used to being seen differently by wealthy peers because of the way she dressed herself and by not being able to hang out at the same places after school. She felt incredibly lucky when her friendship with Asu bloomed. It started from simple admiration and developed into a strong sense of loyalty. Asu was very important to her because she was a very popular girl at school. Osoro felt incredibly valuable by being able to be by her side and being treated equally. Asu saw Osoro as equally capable and would even endorse the idea of Osoro trying to become an athlete. Needless to say, Osoro would endure anything in order to be able to stay by her best friend's side. As days went by, the bullying gradually upscaled. Now, aside from talking behind her back, the bullies would intentionally bump into her or try to make her trip and fall, as well as sabotage small things such as her lunch. It was at that time that Osoro met Raibaru. Because she was a member of the sports team for a while, Osoro was already becoming stronger and fitter. Seeing that, Raibaru challenged her to a spar, which she promptly accepted and was quickly defeated. It was then when she started getting interested in more physical activities. For the first time, Osoro found something she actually wanted to pursue, instead of tying herself to the obligation of being the one who would get her family out of poverty. She wanted to fight, to become stronger, and be as cool as Asu and Raibaru. She wanted to be a strong girl, and the sense of empowerment helped her to endure the bullying further. She found joy in watching many types of combat sports, nurturing love and respect towards champions in each sport category she kept up with. She would get posters, shirts, and read everything available about her favorite celebrities. But things eventually reached a breaking point. When the bullies noticed Osoro wouldn't back down and her reputation started to be set in stone, they started to resort to violence and dirty tactics to try and get her down. First, they attacked Asu and made her give up on Osoro. That was incredibly distressing to her because everything seemed so sudden. One day she was having lunch with her best friend, and the other day she was being asked to stay away because their families were too different? It sounded like the biggest lie. But the betrayal she felt was way too strong to try and rationalize what could have happened. The thought that deep down Asu had the same beliefs as everyone else and saw her as less crushed her to pieces. As the violent attacks were harder to deal with, Osoro found herself having a hard time hiding all of the bruises around her body. That was when Raibaru stepped in, made her spit out what was happening, and promised she would leave things as they were. As we already know, she didn't. Osoro was the one who had to pay for Raibaru's reckless actions, since no one would be crazy to directly attack the Raibaru Fumetsu. When it happened, it was brutal. Osoro experienced the violence she never had before, and that no schoolgirl should ever need to experience. She was hit with glass bottles, punched and kicked, until she couldn't breathe or walk. Her face was left scarred forever, and she knew nothing would be done about it because she had already resorted to everything she could. The school didn't care about her because she wasn't important enough. The people around her saw her as less than human. Even her friends, who didn't think about the consequences of their actions and how they would affect her because They were above everything. Anger, hatred, envy, and jealousy blinded Osoro, which led her to turn into what she is today. She defeated Raibaru and earned the title of strongest student. She wouldn't talk or try to rationalize with people anymore. No one really cared, so she would become what they wanted her to be, a reckless delinquent who would steal, scam, and hurt people that got in her way. As time went by, she eventually found similarly troubled people who went out of their own ways to be by her side. But that's a story for another day. Osoro is a special case when it comes to Senpai's line of action because she's extremely hard to talk to and avoids most people except the delinquents. Senpai would need a lot of effort and determination to get to talk to her in order for her to talk to him. Her elimination methods are also very complicated, but because I've already talked so much about her in this video, let's leave it for another time. I hope you got interested in her, and if you really did, leave a comment and I'll come back with more information about her. Okay, so whoa, this video was a wild ride. I wrote so much stuff to put into it. This is the longest script I've ever wrote, and it is the biggest video I've ever worked on. So thank you so much if you watched up to this point. I really hope this content was nice to watch, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!